How you doing, guys? Eric from worldwasteland.com. Things sure are getting weird out there in the financial, economic arenas. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've probably curated my online feed to be a non-stop daily dose of doom and gloom, as Canadian Prepper puts it, but it's information. And most of the information is at least somewhat rooted in fact, and specifically when you're talking about financial statistics and stuff, how it's spun is always going to be an issue. But for the most part, if you know what they're saying, you can at least get the real data out of it. And even the things like the unemployment, the CPI, like there's real data in there somewhere, even though they've changed the way they calculate it. So, and even with the new, finessed data like that, things are not looking good. In fact, one of the more interesting things, or a couple more interesting things, is that I've seen just recently within the past few days are the consumer defaults, like people defaulting on credit of various kinds, probably credit cards, things like that, is equal to 2020, when everyone was out of job for the pandemic, even though it's already equal to 2020, even though unemployment is still at historic lows. So most people that are counted, this goes back to what I'm saying about the data, because people who stop looking for a job aren't counted. But all the people who are counted, most people, unemployment's not a major issue yet, and people are already having a ton of defaults. So imagine what's going to happen with that when unemployment starts getting worse, if people start losing their jobs for various reasons. We know about these big firms laying people off, tons of trouble in the financial and banking sectors. Those are going to continue to cause problems. Commercial real estate and the commercial mortgage-backed securities are having most of that is the reason why some of these banks have failed so far. Already, the 3 banks that have failed this year is already surpassed, or at least equaled, to all of the banks in terms of the assets on their balance sheets that were lost. Already equal to every bank that failed in 2008. For just the three of the 4 largest banks that have ever failed in the U.S. have been within the past few months. Another scary one. U.S. interest payments on the national debt are now equal to defense spending. And if something like 30% has to roll over at the new interest rates within the next 12 months. So, and obviously defense spending is probably going to be going up too. So we're definitely going to see some machinations. They're going to be forced to act. Lots of people are going to be forced to act in various ways over the next year or two, which is what I predicted in my videos. But how does that affect you? What's going to happen? To be able to tell what we need to do, we need to have some idea of what's going to happen. People have talked about they're thinking that the Fed is going to pivot. I know I've talked about this extensively. Obviously, they're eventually going to pivot. They're going to pivot so fast they could be on Dancing with the Stars when it happens eventually. And then that's when the melt-up happens. But I don't think... My opinion is, and I think Gregory Mannarino has also said that he doesn't think there's going to be a rate cut this year. I think their cut will be a non-raise. They might not raise anymore for the rest of this year. But my thinking is that if they're going to want to let things get to some significant problem before they just raise rates. They're not going to do it at the start of things looking ugly. Because then it still won't look like it was necessary. It might look their fault. And importantly, too, I think I haven't heard anyone mention yet, is that I think they're going to want to time it so, it helps with the election. If they pivoted now, you'd get that initial spike in the markets. But I think things would get ugly quick, major inflation by the time we got to the election, which is well over a year away. What is it, 5th month? So it's, like 16 months away, something like that? No, more than that. It's in November, so yeah, year and a half away. And so I think they're going to just maintain for this year, not raise rates more, at least certainly not a lot more. They might do one more quarter rate point hike or something, but I think they're just going to be like, hey, you know what? We're not going to raise. And that'll be like their version of a raise. They might, try to use their jawboning, credible threats type of thing about raising to get that kind of reaction that they would hope to get from an actual rate cut and then just not raise rates. But I do think that it's likely that it will happen at some point next year. We could start to see the baby steps, the first baby steps of a pivot. And that would probably be later in next year maybe not later, but like midway through the year. Somewhere second quarter, third quarter at the earliest would be my guess, because like I said, they want to have the positive effects of that peaking at election time and not tank everything to the point where it's, inflation is rampant when it's time for people to go vote. So what can you do about this? Well, the answer is always the same, but timing is something that, like I said, don't make your decisions in a way that they're going to be massively affected by timing, because there's nothing worse than being like basically right and still losing, which if you're playing around with a lot of these financial instruments, especially stuff like options that have dates attached to them, that's an easy way to be right about a general trend and be wrong when it comes to actually profiting off of it. So look for the general trends, bet with against those trends, and that's how you can make your money. So what is the trend? The trend is the death of our currency. So you want gold and silver. I know it seems like a canard / meme at this point among the prepper community, but I really, really believe when it comes to like predictions for any financial stuff, I truly believe that there will be a point, at some point in the next 5 or 10 years, where everyone looks back, looking back at Bitcoin and seeing the price in 2020 and being like, yeah, man, that was the play. That was the play. And I think that is gold and silver, and to at least some extent gold and silver mining stocks. I really think we will all look back and be like, man, that was the play. If I had known it was going to be like this, I would have put every penny I had into it. And, I could be wrong. So that's why you probably shouldn't put every penny into it, because I'm not a financial advisor. And I don't have every penny of my wealth in gold and silver. I think one majorly important thing to have is a bunch of cash. And I've been talking to my friends about this, that we're seeing a lot of trouble in the banking system. Even something like, this is just singles. This is $100 or $130 in singles. I have more than $130 lying around, but I think it's important to have a few small bills at least so that you can make change and whatnot. Because there's a ton of problems. It's becoming super, super difficult for people to get money out of the bank. People are having trouble getting even mid 5 figures. Certainly anything $10,000 and above is becoming a massive problem. And I mean massive. Like, you're there for hours. Sometimes you won't even get it. They send you to a different branch. I've even heard from some of these rich guys. I think it was Grant Cardone, who I actually don't like him because he gets people to pay him to tell them that they're poor if you're making $500,000 a year or something. It's really stupid. But it was still an interesting data point that he was talking about. He can't even give cash to the banks anymore. That he went to a bank where he had, 7 figures on deposit with them, some millions of dollars amount, and was about to leave, and he had some bag with $200K in it, roughly $250K, which is a lot of money, but not for a guy like that, and shouldn't be for a bank like that. And he's not talking about withdrawing $250K in cash. He was trying to give it to them, say, here, just deposit this. And they almost wouldn't do that. They couldn't handle it. They didn't know what to do with. I don't know what the issue is, but it messed up their whole system. And he, according to him, he had to be like, hey, look, you're taking this. I'm leaving in 20 minutes or whatever for the airport. You're taking this money, putting it in my account. And eventually they did it, but it's getting them to the point where the banks won't even, the system is completely seized already. And we just haven't even seen the ramifications of that. So it's absolutely, entirely possible, in fact, I think likely, that at some point ATMs will be probably down for at least a little while. Banking holidays where branches are just shut. Maybe even credit cards won't work, and maybe even debit cards, because if the banks go down, like, a debit card's not going to work. Credit cards are probably the least likely or the last to go because they don't require the liquidity. But there's still all sorts of issues that could happen. Like, when you use a credit card, it's basically creating money. And that the amount that they're allowed, the credit they're allowed to have outstanding is based on reserve requirements and other things like that. So if a bank just goes completely down, it's very likely that the credit cards system will at least have some issues, if not be completely seized up and shut down for a period of time as well. So I definitely wholeheartedly recommend everyone who considers himself even remotely into preparedness to have at least a couple months worth of your money, whatever your emergency fund is, just your 30, 60, 90 day emergency fund. Have that in literal actual cash in your house. You're not going to be getting anything in the bank anyway, so just get your bills, pull them out. The bank, honestly, at this point, to get there's some ATMs, depending on where you find them, especially around here because of the casinos and stuff. It's possible to find ATMs that'll let you pull out even $1,000 at a time. Some will, even if you can get the ones that are just 500, that's fine. Hit them once a week or twice a week, every day, or whatever, depending on how much you have in your account, until you get the amount you need. And that's probably going to be less work than trying to go and get $2,000, $4,000, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 out of your bank account. So that's what I think. And other than that, just make sure your generic preps are squared away. Make sure you have the ability to feed yourself, do whatever, personal hygiene things and medicines and whatever else you can do for when this stuff starts getting weird for potentially months. But not all is dark in this world, because the Rule the Wasteland Micro Survival Fishing Kit is now available. And depending on when you're watching this video, as the time of the upload, for the next 5 days or so, it's going to be 25% off. Only weighs about 2 ounces, 55 grams. And so, it's not going to add a whole lot of weight to your bug out pack. Literally fits in the palm of your hand. Doesn't have a crappy tin like all the other survival fishing kits where they have to have, or even survival fire starting kits, snare kits, whatever. They're in terrible tins that you have to have a rubber band on or tape on. I don't know why they use them. This one screws on nicely, gives you a watertight seal, has everything you need to catch fish in a survival situation. And fishing is by far the easiest way to get meat in a survival situation. Preppers, rightly so, talk a lot about snares and traps, which are great, but it takes quite a bit of experience to be able to be effective with them. Quite a bit of time. You have to stay in the same place that the trap is to be able to use them. Fishing, most of us have all done little fishing. It's something that you can be a lot more successful at, even if you do it not, with a lot of skill. You can still be successful at fishing, a lot more so than with trapping. Your first time you set up a snare, you're almost certainly not going to catch anything. You can catch something your first time fishing. It's entirely possible. A lot easier than with traps. And like I said, it's easier to carry. Doesn't take nearly as much time. And yeah, so that's what check that out. Link will be in the description. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you soon.